Okay. A call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for April 20th, 2023. It is 10:01 in the morning. Commissioner Johnston, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item C is our calendar session. There was mention of a Juliet's House event, and I can't remember if it was the 27th or the. Okay, I had, yeah.
Oh, okay. This is benefit. And then
I have the 27th written down, so we're all coming from that at this at different angles. Yeah, we have this weekend.
All starting today and then Friday, Saturday. So you will not see me.
I'm sorry.
So what's the event that we're putting on the
So,
joint calendar?
well, that's what I'm
for
trying to
Saturday?
figure out. I only have Juliet's house written down, but it was for we were just talking to Russell about it. Okay. Okay.
What time is the groundbreaking?
April 28th is the Juliet's House fundraiser.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of.
And then they confirmed with me the groundbreaking.
Thursday at 2.
Okay, so we don't have details on where the fundraiser is, but it's
Yes,
for
yeah.
sure. Oh, okay, so Friday, April 28th at Abbey Road,
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay, so we can add that. And then you said the 4th is the opening, grand opening,
It's the groundbreaking.
groundbreaking, sorry.
In McMinnville.
Okay.
At 2 p.m.
Okay, and then we were talking yesterday about the Willamette Valley Hospital Town Hall, their internal town halls that we've been invited to. Does Tuesday at noon work for you? My goal is to have us all there at the same time.
We can tentatively say Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 25th at noon at Willamette Valley Hospital.
Is that the tour?
No, it's an internal town hall that they do for their staff. It's like a State of the Union.
You said that's all over Zoom.
No, it's in person.
Oh, you can go.
Mhm.
Little tight for me, but I think I can make that.
Okay, I think
If
it's only an
in
hour.
Internal. And we're putting it on the joint calendar.
It's
Are-
not
are
open to
they-
the public.
It is open to the
No.
public? Because that's why,
We put it on there.
Okay,
But
but
we're all
by
gonna be there.
nature, are we now making it a
Public.
public meeting by putting it on the joint calendar because all 3 commissioners wish to attend this town hall?
My understanding is if there are events that we are going to be at more than one that are not public events. And I've had this discussion with Christian and it seems to be that we can still do that if they are not open to the public.
You can all attend the same event, but what would make it a public meeting under the public meetings law is if you discussed or deliberated on matters that were pending or that were expected to come before the board. So if it's a meeting that those things aren't happening. We've talked about, for example, community events or political activities, things like that, where county business isn't being discussed, and it can't be construed that the board is deliberating about topics without having noticed it as a public meeting, that would be the concern. So I don't know enough about the details of this particular event, but if you avoid those kinds of discussions, should be okay.
Based on the conversations, because I met and then the other commissioners have met with the new CEO there. There's nothing come before the board or related to the board in any of the information he's sharing with us about, you know, the hospital and those types of things. So
So
far
what, I'm
as I
sorry,
know.
what again is the purpose of the
It's,
town hall? Or is that what it was, a town hall?
it's town hall is a bad term for it. It's an internal state of the union address to his staff to update them on the plans for going, you know, what the vision is going forward. The invitation was so that we can appear and just be sort of a support and just show community support for them. And
So you're
listen
not
to-
anticipating getting questions or having to discuss any topics that could be
Not
on a future
formally,
agenda
no.
or that are pending before the board?
No, in fact, it probably wouldn't be appropriate for us to do that because
Right.
it is their own meeting. We're just
We're there to listen.
spectators.
But, you know, that's what we do at events like Juliet's house too. So, you know, I just want to be careful.
I don't think putting it on the, if you want to put it on the joint calendar, I don't think that will turn it into a public meeting.
No,
subject to the
it's-
Public meetings law.
But we've typically used the joint calendar as a means that should the press or someone wish to, you know, in an abundance of caution, you know, that if a majority of the board's going to be in an event, you know, my concern is more if you're attending, that it's not, if it's an internal meeting, that we're not somehow by our actions and what we do as a practice is not now opening their meeting that you've been invited to.
Right. I
to
totally get
attend.
where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't want to turn what is otherwise an internal meeting into a public meeting.
Right.
correct.
I don't think you are. Because you're not, governing body's not convening in order to make a decision or deliberate toward a decision.
and I don't
Okay.
anticipate that there's even anything on the horizon that the hospitals are, you know, they don't work with us, they work with the CCO, so.
Yeah. Whatever issues were mentioned were city issues, they weren't county. So,
So don't put it on the joint calendar.
Well, yes, but it's not a,
No, well,
no,
I'd say, because Ken's concern is then you now make their meeting public, which they could be easily be like, no, you need to. But
Mm.
then we're three there, which allows public to know what we three are doing when we're all together.
Not
So I would say
necessarily.
leave it off of the,
I mean, like Ken said, we've, out of an abundance of caution, we've added things to the joint calendar that probably don't technically need to be there. This sounds like one of those.
just don't add it.
Or you could, but by adding it, I don't think you're making it a public
Okay.
meeting either. So
okay, given that discussion, we're still not clear if we can all make it Tuesday at noon.
Yeah,
but
we
we'll-
don't even know.
We'll look
I
at
have
that.
to check.
Okay. Anything else for calendar?
I think that's the longest calendar session.
Wow.
Well, I was kind of laughing because our agenda is short, but we find ways to make it longer.
And Kennedy donated artwork drawing for the Juliet's house auction too. So keep an
Oh.
eye out for that.
Nice.
Who did?
Kennedy,
Kennedy.
my
Oh, your
oldest.
daughter?
Yeah,
She's very talented.
she did it last year too. It was
Excellent.
cool. Worked out really great.
Okay. Item D is public comment. This time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than an agenda item, a quasi judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing. So if you're here to offer public testimony, please come forward, or if you're online, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, hearing none. I don't believe we received any written comment either. Item E is department updates, nothing today. Nothing on our work session today, nothing under consent agenda today. Item H is old business. There's nothing under old business. Item I, other business, I1 is consideration of adopting resolution 23-04-20-1, proclaiming April 23rd through April 29th, 2023 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. We are joined today by our DA and team. Did you have any comments you wanted to offer? Not to make you get up and
Wheel on over.
wheel on over.
With your permission, I won't move to another chair. Every year, each year, we've asked the board to adopt this resolution on behalf of crime victims on it. As you are aware, and I think the community is, my office have a really a long-standing position of ensuring that victims have a meaningful right in the criminal justice system, as is guaranteed both by statute and by the Constitution in the state. And we work very hard to do that. Are we always successful? Of course not. We aren't, but we dedicate significant resources. We try to be cutting edge on our ability to deal effectively with victims and see that they are involved in the system as much as they want to be. And this, I think, this resolution really, I think, shows that the Board of Commissioners, the community as a whole, adopts that position.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for putting this together. So I read it before, or after we vote? I read it before.
Yeah.
Correct, okay. All right. Okay, in the matter of a resolution in support of National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 23rd through 29th of 2023. Whereas over 180,000 Oregonians are directly harmed by crime each year, and the physical, emotional, and financial impact of crime falls on people of all ages and abilities who come from all economic, racial, and social backgrounds, and these crimes affect many more family members, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. And whereas victims who feel understood and supported are more likely to disclose their victimization, seek services, and participate in the justice process. And whereas providing victims with knowledge of their rights and available services further strengthens their ability to recover by restoring a sense of self-empowerment. And whereas a trauma-informed response to victims promotes healing and fosters strength in survivors. And whereas we celebrate those who provide help and support to child victims of violence and sexual abuse, stalking victims, survivors of homicide victims, victims of drunk driving crashes, and victims of domestic, dating, and sexual violence, and many other life-altering crimes in their commitment to respect and enforce victims' rights and to address their needs. And whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit in ensuring that all victims of crime are afforded their rights. And whereas Yamhill County is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for justice for all victims and survivors. And now therefore, the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim the week of April 23rd through 29th, 2023 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week, and reaffirm Yamhill County's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace. Done this 20th day of April, 2023. Commissioners, I will move approval of resolution 23-04-20-1. Is there further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Thank you very much for your support. Appreciate it. And thank you for bringing Nacho. Item I2, consideration of approval of a contract agreement between Yamhill County and Ackland Vegetation Management Co. for the 2023 shoulder spraying project in the amount of $25,500 effective upon full execution through June 30th of 2023. And this is for our herbicide application for 525 shoulder miles of road and to be completed by June 30th.
I have a question, and maybe Commissioner Johnson, you know this, but I was looking at the list of chemicals. I know there are a couple of, glyphosate and stuff they're finding in our food supply. How are we addressing that to make sure there's that buffer?
I have no idea. That might be a question for Mark and see if what the DQ protocols are for that.
Okay.
I do not know.
My guess is that it's probably as strict as,
Mhm.
farming practices in
Right.
terms of buffers, so.
I mean, all those chemicals have EPA labels that you have to follow. The guy
Okay.
that's applying them needs to know all those rules and regulations.
Yeah.
As far as when, where, weather, all that stuff. So
Correct, we're subject to all of that.
it's no different than
Right.
farmers. It's
Okay.
all on the label.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
And there's no, I was going down the list. I don't see any serious like skull and crossbones restricted
Mhm.
use.
Right.
Right.
Most of those are pesticides. So
Okay, thank you.
And the contract has a provision requiring the contractor to comply with all applicable state and
Okay.
federal rules and
Yeah.
regulations as well.
There's some pretty hefty penalties if
yes.
they don't, so.
Yep. And I think the next biggest contract on there was 42 grand. So
Yeah. It was pretty good.
pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And one of those chemicals is super expensive, like Escort. I mean,
Mhm.
just a tiny little jar of that's in the hundreds of dollars.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. Item I3, is it I? Yes, I3, consideration of approval to amend the planning and development permit fee schedule effective July 1st, 2023. We are being joined today by our planning director, Ken
And-
Friday, and is Tim?
Yep, Tim.
Great, thank you.
We're requesting the board adopt new fee schedules for building, plumbing, mechanical, manufactured home and electrical permits with an effective date of July 1st. And to do that, we first need board approval and then we need approval from the state building codes division. And our office has recognized the need to raise our fees for several years. In fact, we brought this before the board. I think it was a couple years ago, and it was just at the beginning of the supply chain issues that the nation was having. And so we were asked to table it. We did. We thought that was the proper call at that time. The administrative rules states that we're required to provide adequate funding necessary to administer and enforce the inspection program. Doesn't really say where those funds are supposed to come from. And years ago, we actually had general fund money that was supporting the planning department. And due to budget issues and because it didn't seem right for taxpayer money to be used to fund development, it was decided that the department should have be a fee-based department and not be reliant on general funds. So in the 1990s, that was shifted over to be entirely fee supported. We're asking for this adjustment because we don't want to be a burden on the general fund. And the fees that we collect today are actually fees that are used to cover inspections tomorrow. And sometimes, usually it's months, but sometimes it's actually years for projects to go through. So we haven't raised our fees in, over a decade. And the best illustration I have is the one that I put in the memo that, our office has a minimum permit fee of $51 and that the average cost for doing an inspection, depending on where it is in the county, is $75 to $80. We also know we're trying to walk that line between having fees to fund the department and keeping them low. I'm fortunate to have our building official, Tim Cadiga here, who in a previous previous life, it was worked in developments and was with, in jurisdictions that were fairly aggressive on their fees, and neither of us wants to have that. So we're trying to have the fees high enough to keep to cover our costs, but low enough so that a homeowner can is not burdened by them. So we try to strike that balance between those fees, and so we're just asking for approval of them to go forward with them to the state.
Great, thank you, Ken. So just some general questions. How do we compare in terms of other maybe neighboring counties or even cities? Are we?
We're a little bit less than the city of Newburgh.
Okay.
And with that, they have a smaller footprint that they have to travel. Our footprint
Yeah,
is enormous,
Right.
but we're very comparable. We're actually lower than almost every jurisdiction around. We're less than Polk County, Marion County
Mhm.
on the county side of it. Our minimum fee is probably about the lowest of any of the ones in this region.
Okay.
So.
Excuse me, we regularly get comments from anyone that was in Washington County or Multnomah County that, our fees are significantly less.
So I'm assuming you've noticed an uptick in permits since we had that discussion about keeping those or pausing on the increases.
The permit, things have slowed down because of the increase in interest rates. So we're
Okay.
seeing them drop off now. But since the start of the pandemic and then through probably within the last year, permit activity was very heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's one of the reasons we were able to maintain our level of service without increasing the rates, is because we had a good activity base. But with increased costs in fuel, in tires, in the whole gamut of things, we're finding it more and more difficult to maintain that level of service. Obviously, some of the other things, wages and things like that, that'll start to change, are going to really impact us heavy. The state is mandating we go all electronic, which I've resisted to some degree because not everybody in this county has internet and computers and things. So we kind of do a hybrid of it. We try and offer paper plans with electronic reporting and stuff, but that they're really trying to push us away from that even. So, but we're going to try and maintain it that way for as long as we can.
Okay. Okay, you answered my questions about the cost drivers. That's helpful. And it looks like some of these we haven't increased for 20 years. So it's been quite some time, and you would naturally think that costs would go up over 20 years. So any other questions?
Yes, I remember when this discussion first came around, and I remember thinking, oh, come on, Ken, we can't be doing this to people. The way you outlined it and described, what it costs us and what we're charging, I mean, where does the rest of it come from? And also when you compare to the other counties, not only with the cost, but the level of service and folks that have actually opted to come and build here because they can't get it done anywhere else. And over, we hear about the service, the excellent service that your staff and your team provide. And unfortunately, it's just the way, and when we talk about personnel costs, I mean, that's going through the roof, and it's really impacting what government is trying to provide based on the continual increase in wages. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you see all other departments, even last year during budget season. And for the planning department to wait as long as we have to raise fees is pretty good. I mean, there's some 2006 and 2010, I think was the last time any of them were addressed. So I think we're due.
Absolutely. And thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve item I3?
So moved.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken and Tim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Rick's budget assessment and taxation. Typically, I don't know if the numbers shifted a little bit, but typically we receive about 20% of this award. Fortunately, the amount has decreased over time, but it still makes up, a good 10 to 12% of his budget. So it's a critical component. So
Mhm.
I will move approval of item I4. Are there any further discussions?
No.
None.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Item I5, consideration of approval and notice of intent to award a professional service agreement between Yamhill County and Summit Food Service LLC for food and commissary services for the Yamhill County Correctional Facility and Yamhill County Juvenile Detention Facility. And I believe this was scored by an evaluation committee that the sheriff has set up. So went through not just the food service, but also the services we provide, commissary services we provide. So after scoring, they determined that Summit was a better service than Aramark. So this would be replacing Aramark, which is our current provider. Any questions on that?
No, had some discussions yesterday and I guess Jessica was on that scoring team and the question always comes is we should, perhaps focus a little bit more on nutrition, especially for our
Yeah.
juvenile population, our inmates, because it does affect behavior. And apparently other counties that they had checked with that are using this service, it is a higher level of
Nutritional
higher
value.
quality of food. And
Okay.
hopefully we can make that a huge focus in the future.
Okay. I will move approval of item I5. Any further discussion?
None.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. So commissioners, I have an add-on to the agenda, and this is consideration of approving testimony in opposition to House Bill 2002B. You should have received a copy of the letter this morning. I can read it if that's more appropriate, if you haven't had time to review it. But this bill is a bill that is kind of couched under healthcare expansion, but has some extremely disturbing components to it. One is that it would mandate reproductive services for children who access the student-based health clinics, regardless of age. It would force providers to provide those services as well as transgender services under penalty of jail time and fines. And because of that, they are then concealing their identity as part of the bill. No parental notification or involvement in that process. It would restrict counties or cities from putting any kind of bumper lanes on this or any type of protection against the implications, the rollout of this bill. And so counties or cities would not be allowed to do that under threat of a civil lawsuit. And it's interesting, I watched the last hearing on this bill when the Legislative Fiscal Office came in front of the committee and was answering questions. And one of the questions asked of this woman was, does this allow abortion access or mandate abortion services for someone as young as 10 years old in our schools? And the answer was yes. And the response to that was a gasp among the Democratic legislators who had put their name on this. They had no idea that that actually was the effect of the bill. So it's pretty shocking to see that. And so, you know, I think, first of all, time is of the essence. They are hearing the second reading of this bill today. I didn't check the time, but it's at some point today. And then the third reading is on Monday. So even though the official avenue for providing testimony is closed, my intent with this letter is to email it to every single state senator and every single state representative, and let them know where we stand in protection of children.
Chair,
Thoughts?
a couple of thoughts. I think if anybody has any doubts about just how evil this bill is, and I can't think of another word to describe it, I would print the bill out or go read the bill. It's the engrossed, the very latest, Be Engrossed House Bill 2002. It's 37 pages. And if you can come away from reading this and not be very angry and very disturbed at just how evil the intent of this is, I look at the legislators who've been sponsoring this, who are on the list, and I see Representative Senator Gelser Lewin. And I remember working with her for years on some of the issues that are affecting children and supposedly caring for children. It's kind of ironic that this is National Crime Victims Week, and
Right.
we're supposed to be protecting the rights of child sex abuse victims. And if these kids aren't sex abuse victims, I don't know what is. We're telling kids, don't vape because it's dangerous for your health, but you can cut your penis off. Let's call it what it is. Gender affirming care. We have sanitized it. You can cut off your breasts, the healthy breasts of a young girl, give them hormones, which will effectively make them infertile, cause huge levels of aggression in the testosterone that's being delivered to those who are transitioning from female to male. We're seeing that daily. And then we also call this reproductive health rights, where a minor, and I watched that hearing where even the legislators who were supporting this didn't know that a 10-year-old could be given an abortion without her parents' knowledge. The parents have become the enemy here, and the state knows better. And I'm sorry for the rant, and I'm sorry for going on, but we have a majority party that is ramming this stuff down our throats, and the counties are now being hamstrung. They're going to, if you read in here, they're going to be watching the CCOs for compliance on this. So you will do this. I think it's frightening, and I think every parent should be very concerned that their child isn't even going to come home and tell them this stuff because they're going to be protected. It's evil.
Yeah, I agree with your statement. I also think that, you know, what they're not talking about is the level of exploitation of our children. This is a growing industry. It is a lucrative growing industry. And so you can't just sit back and ignore the fact that you're basically forcing our children into a lifelong need of a healthcare system by doing this to them at age 8 or 10 or 15, right? It's really shocking when you start to look at every single layer of these efforts. And so, you know, my letter is extremely direct and to the point, but this bill is so bad. And, you know, anytime you see the Democratic Party rally to the point where everyone has to put their name on a bill for protection, it's a huge red flag. We see it all the time. They know how bad this is. And we have to stand up and do something. I mean, this is just crazy. At this point, the only protection, the only level of protection is our school boards. The school boards are the ones, even if they have no way of preventing the implementation of this bill or parts of it, they are the last line of defense to exposing what is happening in the schools and informing parents. This bill cuts cities and counties out completely.
By design.
By design, because we are the local public health authority. it's really quite shocking. So, Commissioner, I want to have you offer your
No,
thoughts too.
I appreciate you putting this together. I like how the letter focuses on minors and children under 18. And how the disconnect's gonna come in, with not notifying parents of things that are gonna go on. So this bill's convoluted and poorly written, and I appreciate you putting the letter together.
We saw how quickly OHA responded when back during the lockdown, this board, the majority of this board anyway, tried to allow for parental consent for the experimental vaccine being given to minors. And by that afternoon, they brought the hammer down and said, you do that and you'll be fined.
Yeah.
So OHA doesn't play. And the golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rule. So in some perfect world, OHA would be out of the equation and we could do this on our own, but unfortunately we can't.
So I will move approval of the letter of testimony in opposition to House Bill 2002B. So the process will be, we'll put this on letterhead and get the signatures, and then I will email it to the entire legislative body today after the meeting. So
Thank
how-
you.
How that will go. Okay. Did I move approval? Yes. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you very much. I don't know if this is considered an add-on or we just discuss it during announcements, but I wanted to address NACO's and AOC's request for us to formally weigh in on the Scott Amendment, which is the clawback, potential clawback of what are quote unquote unobligated ARPA funds. I'm not sure how they even define that because the federal government has obligated them. They've sent the money. So I don't know if they're going to go, county by county or whatever and say, how much of your ARPA have you not spent yet? You need to give it back. I mean, is that the,
But long as it's obligated, right?
Well, it's not that it's obligated by the feds, it's obligated at the local level.
Okay.
And so that's part of the reporting that I do. I don't have concerns. I understand the concerns with other counties and jurisdictions that may be
Yeah.
having, because maybe they haven't obligated all their funds.
Mhm.
But this board has already taken action and has already essentially obligated the funds to specific program areas. And I've already been reporting that to the
Okay.
Treasury. So we don't have funds that have not been obligated.
okay.
to
So
be-
that doesn't mean spent or, sent out the door.
No,
It
there's
just
two different
means-
timelines.
Okay.
There's a timeline under the Treasury guidance on when we have to have the funds obligated. And then there's a second deadline that requires when the funds have to be spent.
And
So-
spent just means they've left us and went to the project.
That's one I'm still working
Okay.
on getting further clarification. Yes, we have already spent the funds and I report them because we did grant awards, but there is some requirements that people who receive those grant funds, they need to be
Have follow-up
It-
and paperwork.
right.
Okay.
They have to be, there's a little bit of gray area in the guidance on that, on whether or not it truly is spent. We can't just do a grant award and then someone possibly sits on the grant funds for the next 10 years. They're supposed to be per our agreements. They're supposed to be complying with those same guidelines. So then we don't have any concerns with that.
Still play that through. If they don't, for some weird reason, then we claw back and then feds claw back from us or what?
Correct.
Okay.
Or it would actually be that the feds would come and say that
Yep.
this project's not done, county needs to pay
Mhm.
back, and that's why we have agreements, not soil and water, the sewer and water infrastructure grants is a good example. So we gave $6.8 million in funds out to a laundry list. If there's a project out there that doesn't get finished, and then we get contacted by the Treasury and says, this project didn't get finished, we need to pay that back. That's why we have the agreement, and it's specifically in the agreement with that jurisdiction that you didn't get it done, so we need to get the funds.
What is the time on your example of like sewer and water? What is the timeline? Because I know there's going to be huge hurdles of getting contractors to finish some of these larger projects. I mean, it'll come
Let
down to the
me-
wire on some.
Because I have a bunch of dates bouncing around in my head and I don't want to give incorrect information.
Okay.
But I can get that.
Okay.
And follow up.
So the childcare, we haven't. Does obligated mean we have carved out this amount of money and we're going to dedicate it to that?
Yeah, we've already done that.
So, so because we haven't moved ahead with that, does that mean that any of that is in jeopardy because we haven't said, okay, this is where it's specifically going to go?
It could be because even though we've obligated it to that specific category, but we haven't actually identified specifically how we're going to release the
Right.
funds. And how the funds are going to get spent. And so the longer we go, the closer those deadlines start coming
Right.
into play.
Okay.
So that's where it's going to be important to, at some point in the near future, that was kind of an open question based on the last presentation. We haven't put that on the agenda to come back and talk about the childcare grant in particular. There's two, I'll call them buckets of funds related to ARPA that are remaining. The childcare is part of our direct allocation. And then there's a portion of that which we are in fact spending that was also for rural broadband,
Broadband.
but we are spending that portion right now with the consultants that are currently working on that plan. The other bucket is we actually had it wasn't a direct allocation. It was part of the state's ARPA allocation, and Senator Boquist identified those funds that came to the county. We have
Mhm.
2.3 million
Mhm.
for rural broadband projects. But hopefully, once we get the plan done, we'll be able to move pretty quickly. That's a little bit different. That's kind of, we're in the same position as the state gave us a grant award. I have to report back to the state the status of that project, and I've been giving quarterly updates on where we're at with that. But
And it didn't sound like it affected what was the internal, where you didn't have to obligate it, you could just kind of,
there's the revenue replacement.
okay.
And that's a reporting function that I'm going to be working on the latest treasury report this week because it's the next quarterly reports due at the end of next week. So I'll have more information on how that shakes out, because we can take as an example, we have $22 million that we received. I'm just going to use round numbers. We've received $22 million. We can take a standard revenue replacement of $10 million. It doesn't mean that we're actually treating it into revenue. We can still identify it or earmark it for specific projects. And there's a possibility that some of the rural broadband and even some of the childcare could fall under that we still have it. We're not at risk at losing it because it falls under that $10 million, because we never, not even close the actual revenue replacement to that 10 million, but we still have it identified for projects.
And where does that live right now?
In Fund 32 in the budget. And so the first week in May, I'll be able to give an update
Okay.
on where those funds are. We have two different funds where you got Fund 32, which is the county's direct allocation of ARPA, which we have just over $3 million remaining in that fund. And that's the childcare and the rural broadband. And then I have another 2.4 million that's actually over in Fund 40, because again, that wasn't a direct allocation that came through the state. And so I have that budgeted in another portion of the budget. And yeah,
Okay.
we're going to be able to talk about it in depth in 2 weeks.
It seems like, I didn't read into the actual bill, but it seems like the amendment was because you have to obligate the funds by the end of next year.
Correct.
So it kind of sounded like he was just trying to claw back whatever he could for the sake of emergency management. I mean, that's what it sounded like. I don't know. I didn't really read into the specifics, but if we're not concerned about us, then I guess we'll leave it to other counties to sort of.
Well, I mean, if we need to go help other counties and have a larger voice for them, I'm all for that. But as long as I feel fairly confident where we sit, if
Yeah.
we're all obligated, but if somebody else needs help, I don't mind
Well,
having
I
a
feel
voice
like
for them.
it's something AOC should put together as a statement.
Yeah, because I mean, I'd feel better, because when it comes to obligating the funds, we've taken some actions and we've done that. I feel much better about the ones that we've actually made grant awards and have agreements and we've released those
Mhm.
funds. To me, that's a much better definition of obligation.
Yeah.
That we've taken some official action with that. And
What's your next closest deadline that's coming up, that funds that would be coming before us that needs to be voted on so they get delivered so a project can get started? Is there
I think the
anything you're
child-
concerned
Yeah.
about?
the
Childcare.
child
Just the-
care is probably the biggest one,
Okay.
and then the rural broadband's gonna be the other one.
Okay.
Because once HR Green has that plan put together to come back and talk to the board, then we can start figuring out what type of programming to make those funds available to ISPs for expanding broadband. So both of those. Yeah, we're gonna be
My
busy.
biggest concern would be, we're sitting here, I don't want to say wasting time, but we're dragging our feet waiting for project proposals to come in when the lengthiest point of some of this is going to be the construction work. And like broadband, that could be a multi-year deal.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Mhm.
And then you get up to where the project's not complete, and then
Mhm.
now we're in a bind with a clawback or something.
It doesn't have to be completed.
Mhm.
The project has to be
Just started.
started and.
And they need to prioritize spending the funds that we're releasing first.
Yeah. Okay,
Well, and keeping in mind, like the rural broadband, that one is based on the RFIs and every request for information that we had put out to all the local area providers. Even based on the dollar amounts we were hearing back for some of the projects, the 2.4 million is going to help, but it's not going to, the dollar figure for implementing the projects was quite a bit higher.
Mhm.
So hopefully, based on the recommendations from HR Green, we'll come up with some type of grant program and get that out to ISPs to actually make some meaningful investments in expanding rural broadband. So
Okay.
it's a complicated one, just much in the same way as the childcare. That's another one. How best to use the funds. We have over $2 million, how best to invest that.
Yep.
Mhm.
okay, so so can I get consensus from the board that if AOC puts together some type of testimony against the Scott Amendment, that we're okay signing on to it?
Well, the only thing is, because I kind of want to play devil's advocate here a little bit, there are some jurisdictions that have this money that they've done nothing with. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of accountability. And so this is sort of a nudge. And that's why when I read that, I felt, very proud of the work that, like
Mhm.
our administrator and our board has done to move things along. But there are some counties that have not done that. So I would do a wait and see, and everybody's pretty much, you're on the hook for these funds, so there is no free lunch.
Yeah, true.
You're strings
Well, and they were
attached.
supposedly voting or could have voted on this yesterday. So it just seems like everything is last minute.
It was it was
Yeah.
like, and it's due today type of thing.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, how about I just follow up with them and see what the status is and we can go from there.
Okay.
So that brings me into kind of the next thing on my list which was the childcare ARPA. We heard the presentation. There weren't any questions from commissioners at the time. Is it reasonable to expect that we can revisit that conversation next week?
That might be tough, huh?
It's up to the board.
Because we are getting questions about status. So
I think that's up to the board on how you want to approach that. You
should
know.
we can wait until after budget week?
I
I'm
would
just kinda-
recommend that. There's an
Okay.
awful lot that's got to go on between this week and next week, and childcare is not going to be an easy. It's going to require some conversation and then some next steps, and I don't think that we can dump this on.
Okay.
Staff at this.
I just want to keep it on the radar.
Yeah, I
'cause,
would
you know,
say
we-
let's put it on for after budgets and at least have an initial discussion. And if there are any questions that anybody has as to what the options are, I would say be prepared to bring those, what are your suggestions? What are your questions? And then we can go to the CCO and say, hey, what about this? And then look at what some other jurisdictions are doing. I know that the Biden administration just signed an executive order regarding childcare and mandating childcare for businesses that are accessing federal funds. It seems to be a bit of federal government overreach, but that's not a discussion for now. We have to address the funds that we have, how we can help our community.
Mhm. Okay. So is the 11th, I'm just kind of trying to at least pinpoint a date for discussion. Is the 11th? Does that work? For
I
discussion?
would check with our staff.
18th, 11th or 18th? May?
Yeah, it's whatever,
Realistically.
yeah, I think my only concerns with staff, if there's specific questions for staff, I will say that the challenge that I have is next week.
Yeah.
Is my focus
Yeah.
is currently and through next week is getting ready for budget week. So I think the earlier we get or maybe it also depends if you want Jen Richter and representatives from the CCO to be able to attend to answer questions
Mhm.
about the recommendations and components of the report. So I think so I think any of those dates in May will make it work.
I'd like to have them here to answer questions because that was pretty complicated
Yeah.
roadmap.
There's a lot. Yeah. Okay, well.
And DCI.
Let's throw out the 11th or the 18th and see if Jen is available for either one. And then, commissioners just, in the meantime, let's revisit individually and formulate questions and make sure that we're ready for that. And
And we'll schedule it for a work session.
Yeah.
So I'll
Okay.
reach out to Jen and Seamus and see which of these dates work best for them, and then we'll schedule it as a work session.
okay. Sounds good. Okay, so we are on to technically onto announcements, item K. Let's see, Commissioner Starrett and I went to the McMinnville Chamber breakfast on Tuesday morning. Wonderful to see all of the business owners there and some good discussions about how they're doing locally. Newburgh Prayer Breakfast, like we said, is Saturday morning. Earth Day is Saturday as well. So there is a Sheridan cleanup every year on Earth Day. If you have some time to swing out there, it's always a fun day. It's always raining.
Yes.
So, and then I talked just briefly with Ken about, budget week and preparation for all that. It sounds like budget binders are probably towards the mid to end of next week. So that'll be good. We'll have a weekend to review those and prepare. And I just want to thank our budget committee members for giving up almost a week of their life. Denny Elmer and Doreen App and Jason Fields. So we're looking forward to seeing them in a short amount of time. Any other announcements?
The CCO meeting, Board of Directors meeting, we had Mayor of McMinnville, Mayor Drabkin, and Alexandra Hengen from YCAP discussing their need for that shortfall, $609,000 for the Navigation Center. I abstained from the vote due to some concerns I had, but the board opted to take a $609,000 from the share funds, which are required per the state of profits that the CCO has to to fund that, the renovations and the actual navigation center there on the Adams Street properties. So hopefully we'll take a wait and see approach, and hopefully it's successful and helps people move off the streets into something more permanent and not just become sort of a way station to continue addiction. I am concerned that we're loving our people to death by making it easy for them to stay, stay addicted. So I hope this is a game changer. And then also on Monday is the ribbon cutting for the Youth Outreach McMinnville, long time coming, out on Davis Street, which will be a place for our kids to go. We know that when our kids are at loose ends, especially the at-risk ones, they wind up, that's the sure path to homelessness. And hopefully we can catch them before that. So it's an exciting thing. Many, many people in this community have been working for a long time to see that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to that. Commissioner?
Good segue. So Saturday was Love Inc.
Yeah.
That was very interesting. That was the first time that I've gotten a background on it. You guys may know more about it, but it started in Newburgh, I think like 2005. And now they're expanding to McMinnville. And, basically it's a coalition of different groups and churches throughout McMinnville. And they Love Inc., I guess for lack of a better explanation, organizes those services.
Maximizes efficiency.
Yep. And it was.
Yeah, it's amazing what
Yep,
they do.
It was
Yeah.
amazing. So it went great. Seemed like there's a lot of good community response to it, and it's gonna
Great.
be nice to watch
Yeah.
it roll out in McMinnville.
Yeah, thank you for going that event.
Yeah.
That's been the backbone of that for
Mhm.
a long time, just making sure that everybody knows where to go for what they need.
Yep. No, and that's the biggest thing. It's all, the pieces are there. It's
Yeah.
just the communication.
Yep.
And Love Inc., that's what they're gonna bring, is the communication factor and a little bit of organization of, maybe it's one church has diapers.
Yeah.
So it funnels the right people to that
Mhm.
direction. One of them has a soup kitchen and it funnels them that
Mhm.
direction. It's just so a couple of the examples that came up would be, so if the homeless are coming to find services, they would not jump around to multiple ones and just gather.
Mm.
It's let's make a cohesive approach to this so you can actually get to the right point in life where you can actually get help and get into programs instead of making it look like you're just going right down the line, grab everything you need for the day and you go on. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
thought it was pretty cool.
It's kind of a hub and spoke model. It's been quite effective. So
And classes that teach
Yeah.
people how to
So-
move forward.
Yep. It's a very, very inclusive. I
Mhm.
liked it.
Yeah.
I like the approach that they
Yeah.
have to it. And, Newburgh's had it for quite a while already.
Mhm.
It seems that as good as that program is, of why it didn't expand sooner than that, but anyway.
Yeah.
And Love Inc. is national. I learned that.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, it is.
okay.
you.
Parks update.
Yes.
So we're subcommittee met and the pieces are coming together for the puzzle quest.
You seem
Oh, yeah,
excited.
I was so ready for that one. But we had a really good meeting Friday and everybody's on the same page, progressing quickly. We had kind of a mock puzzle quest book put together based on last year's. Just got an email yesterday from Jim as an update for clues from other board members. That got updated into the puzzle quest yesterday. So it's ready to go. Few modifications. April 26th is our next meeting to approve and maybe modify a few sayings or pictures on the cover. Because I don't think they want to call it puzzle quest or passport. I can't remember which it is, but either way, super easy modification to be made and then goes out to printing. Goal is to have it done before Memorial Day because there is 10 parks now. Last year was 8. There's going to be 10 parks. And so the theory is, once a week a family goes out. And so there's only 11 weeks of summer. So it's going to be tight. And we want to get it out by
Yeah.
Memorial Day. So
Okay.
everybody has time to. The other thing is outreach so it's going to be free. The consensus was to make it free. We're not going to charge for it to cover printing costs. We're going to go to some of the businesses that supported it last year to see, number one, if they're willing to, I guess, donate a little bit towards printing costs. And also if they're supporting this project, if they'd like to also have something from their business as the prize. Last year, they just went to Big Five, bought a few different outdoorsy type items. But
As
it makes
prizes.
more sense to have those businesses that are sitting there and be like, hey, we want to be recognized. We're
yeah.
here to support you. Let's have stuff from those businesses as the prize. So that'll be the next step, doing outreach for that.
It's great.
I'm super excited about it.
Yeah.
Parkway Committee met this morning. Representative Scharf brought up something interesting. She has been holding back some priority bill slots, and so she's done one for House Bill 3613. And it is $125 million ask to fund the bypass.
Yeah.
So that she's thinking first reading possibly today or maybe tomorrow. So it's gonna get fast tracked through.
Okay.
But just, I guess, keep that on your guys' radar.
Can we
She's
offer?
fairly hopeful for it because there seems to be a lot of hurdles with the I-5 bridge doing that because of all the tolling, and
Yeah.
it's bringing in a lot of different issues besides that, to where it's going to hold that up to where she's actually hopeful that this might get pushed through, funded
Okay.
for bypass. So that
Can
was supporting
we-
Parkway. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Can we offer some testimony and support?
Yes, and I wrote that down in my
Okay.
notes. And I will get with her to find the details on that.
Okay.
Cause I don't
think
know
we
if it
can
goes to her or if you just,
Individually.
well, and there's a certain committee that's gonna do the first reading too, and I need to find out which one that is.
Christian, can we sort of preliminarily approve a joint statement and just have Kit draft it and send it in?
If you're comfortable giving a commissioner the ability to draft
Okay.
a statement on behalf of the board, I think the board can certainly do that.
We've done that before.
You know,
Okay.
we've done that before. You don't have to take formal action, but you certainly could.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. So if you want to put a statement together and just send it to Carolina and have us put it on letterhead and have us all sign it, you can just send it in.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
All right,
thank you.
I'll do
Great.
that. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And then my last one. Oh, fair ambassadors. That was super fun.
It sounds exciting.
12 applicants. Years past, lucky to get 3, maybe 6.
Yeah.
And so we're starting this out and they are nailing it one right after another. And we're not even halfway through. And I'm already having a conversation with Leslie Lewis, like, can we like add one more? And I'm like, I will find, I'll make sure I find the scholarship money. Don't worry about that. Can you handle one more? And she's like, yes. I'm like, cool. So we picked 4. I'm not going to say who it is because the meeting's tonight for Fair Board at
Formalizing it, yeah.
5:30 or 6, formalizing it, but
Were
that
there mostly seniors or?
mix,
There's a
juniors,
mix, okay.
seniors, because there was so many, at least for me, and making a decision, we prioritize seniors
Yeah,
because
that makes
juniors have an
sense.
opportunity, and when Leslie was reaching back out to announce winners, highly encouraged all juniors, please reapply for next year
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
were great. Everybody was great.
Why do you think we have so much interest?
It seemed like, so I think 2 or 3 of the applicants was because of Grace Adams, who was a ambassador in the past, and she reached out to them, almost advertising and be like, hey, you guys need to apply for this.
Mhm.
One that I talked to did it as more of a interview experience.
Mhm.
Still hoping that she would get it,
Sure.
but
Mhm.
it was a good experience for her. I don't know.
Was it
That's-
a mix of schools?
Yeah.
Pretty good mix of
2
schools.
charter schools, Delphi,
Oh, great.
3 or 4 from YC. Dayton had 1 or 2.
Okay.
None from AMD this year.
Okay.
And they had some from Amity in the past.
Yeah.
but It was
Any
awesome.
from Newburgh?
I don't know. I didn't bring
Okay.
this with me. Man,
Yeah,
That's good.
no,
It's
that's
encouraging.
That's amazing. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think last year, I think we only had 3
Yeah.
Like
we
a
had
three.
3.
and we picked up, we only
Right.
3 scholarships. So.
Yep.
Awesome.
Do you have any
Okay.
young men who are stepping up like we have
One.
in the past? Okay.
One.
Great. Okay. Any further announcements? All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I will adjourn the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for April 20th, 2023. It is 11:06. Thank you.